back to my YouTube channel, and today loves, I'm coming at you with another scary video, but with a little bit of a difference. So for those of you who have been on my channel for a while, you know that I love the paranormal. I love anything paranormal, anything scary. I love horror movies, and my all-time favorite are horror movies that are based on true stories. So we've gone through a lot of different paranormal games and rituals on my channel, but we haven't talked about the most famous and common one, which is known as the Ouija board. So the Ouija board is said to be the most famous and common paranormal game of them all, and I have actually seen a couple Ouija boards in my lifetime. So I'm gonna be honest with you guys. The Ouija boards that I saw were not of their box, and I've never touched one before, but I have seen them in their box on the shelves in different stores. However, my aunt and dad have both seen the Ouija board, and my aunt played with one back when she was a teenager. So with that being said, today we are going to be reading 8 true, terrifying Ouija board stories. So I have read and heard a lot of experiences of people who said they loved contacting something through the Ouija board and had an amazing experience, but I also heard stories of people saying they wish they never touched the board in the first place. So we're going to read the stories, we're going to go through them, and then we're going to get into my personal opinion about the stories and the board. And again, like I say with all my scary videos, if you guys don't like this stuff and aren't comfortable with it, feel free to click off. But now let's get into the 8 true, terrifying Ouija board stories. Okay. This first one is called, I Can See You Through the Window. I was about 12 or 13, spending the night at a friend's house, goofing around with the Ouija board with him and his sister. We were getting all sorts of gibberish, plus words spelled out, just kind of scaring ourselves for fun, not taking it very seriously. Then we got the message, I can see you through the window. And then, I can see you through his eyes. Or something like that. There was just a small window in the basement room where we were, and just a backyard and woods past the driveway, visible through the window. We asked him more questions, and it said, I'm under the car. So we somehow got the nerve to go out there with a flashlight and peer under the car, where we saw a huge black stray cat hissing. We ran inside freaking out, and in that exact moment the power failed and all the lights in the house went out. We were just about to freak out when a few minutes later the power came back on. We sat up till dawn that night and never played with the board again. That is terrifying. Like, I know if I was in their position, I'd probably start to cry. That is so scary, and I'm assuming whenever they were talking to, the spirit or demon could see them through the cat's eyes. That is scary. Okay. This next one is called A Mysterious Death. My 2 best friends, Em and Elle for this story, and I played with the Ouija board at Em's house. It was going fine until Em asked the spirit how it had died, and it said, murder. She asked how it had been murdered, and it said, not I. It gave us its name and something older that I could no longer remember, and gave us a date in the 1800s. It started to get very heavy. The whole room felt different, and the little thing on the board was ripped out of our hands and went across the room. We stopped playing immediately after that. Em's mom died of cancer a week later, very suddenly. Nobody knew. Probably a coincidence, but Elle's mom was hospitalized for a serious drinking problem not long after that, and then mine had emergency hospitalization the same week. I have since then experienced things that I don't think I would have without this experience. Voices, a dark shadow, footsteps. I wonder if I'm haunted. It has been 9 years. That is so scary, and I don't think that's a coincidence. If you play with a Ouija board and you eventually upset whatever you're playing with, or they just are violent for no reason, then they can end up hurting somebody in your family. And the fact that all 3 of their moms had to be either hospitalized or there was something wrong, I think kind of shows us that whoever they were talking to did not really want to be nice. Okay. This next one is called Our Good Friend Roger. I was over at a friend's house back in the early 90s. I believe I was in 9th grade at the time. There were 4 of us, myself and 3 other girls. They kept on asking me if I wanted to play with the Ouija board because they'd been talking to some dude on it named Roger. I was totally skeptical at first. I wasn't buying it. Totally thought that they were moving the planchette, until I asked the board a question that only I knew. We had just gotten our grades from school back that day, and I asked him what I had got in science. I remember this clearly, and I know my friends did not know the answer. The board spelled out my grade. Of course, that spiked my interest, so I started asking it more questions. I can't really recall the details of that night, other than the board kept on calling one of my friends B-word. It hated her. It liked me. His name was Roger, and he had been stabbed to death. At one point, I was the only one controlling the board and asking it questions. It worked. The freakiest thing that's ever happened to me. I'm not super spiritual. I've never seen anything else paranormally related. And feel that I'm a very rational person. All I know is that something supernatural was controlling that board without a doubt. Okay, that one's not like too scary, but it kind of just shows you how real these things are. I mean, she asked a question and he was able to answer the right answer. So, I mean, it just shows you how real the Ouija board is. It's not really like as terrifying as the other ones. Okay. This next one is called The Case of the Vanishing Board. We were hanging out in a friend's dorm room and busted out the Ouija board. There were a few of us who had used them before and a few of us who hadn't that were quite skeptical. It was around 11 p.m. and the communication with the board was going well, when one of my friends who was skeptical kept on calling BS to the whole thing. We convinced him to sit on the floor with us and give it a shot. His first question is this for real or just a bunch of BS? The planchette zipped to no. Fine, he said, still not believing. Prove it. No sooner had he finished that statement when the lights in the room flickered and the building's fire alarm went off. This freaked us all out and we left the room to follow the fire alarm procedures. After about 20 minutes, campus safety said that it was a false alarm and let us back into our dorms. When we arrived back to our friend's room, the Ouija board was gone. No one took it with us, and the room was left locked. That is terrifying. I think the worst possible thing you could do in playing with a Ouija board is asking whatever you're talking with to prove that it's real, because once you ask it to prove, you have given it permission to do whatever it wants. And I think they were only lucky that the fire alarm went on and the lights flickered on and off, because it could have ended a lot worse once you ask a spirit to prove itself. Okay. This next one is called A Creepy Christmas Greeting. I got a Ouija board for Christmas when I was in the 6th grade. That night, I went over to my best friend's house and brought the Ouija board with me. We went up to her room, set it on the floor, and asked, "Is there anyone in the room with us?" The planchette spelled out Ruth, which was my grandma's name and her great-aunt's name. Both my grandma and her great-aunt had died that year. We threw the board back in the box and were totally freaked out. I brought it home and put it in my closet, but every time I looked at the box, it gave me this horrible, creepy feeling. So I ended up throwing it in a dumpster a couple of years later. Okay, again, that one's not like too terrifying, but again, it just shows you how real these things really are. I mean, most people do play with the Ouija board to contact a deceased relative, so maybe it was her grandma and great aunt. Okay, this next one is called The Spirit in the Corner of the Room. Once, right after my ex had lost his friend in an airplane accident, we took the Ouija board out to use it. She was very present, and she was very scared and alone and desperate for communication. We stopped using it, and immediately I felt this presence in the corner of my room. I closed my eyes to take a deep breath. Suddenly, the pointer started moving rapidly around and was going too fast to spell out the words. It was terrifying. I refused to use the Ouija board again. I immediately felt exhausted, completely and utterly drained. I laid down and had a nap. I was asleep for exactly 30 minutes. I woke up, bolted out of bed. I closed my eyes for a second to adjust myself to where I was, and I saw this spirit thing standing in the corner of my room. It suddenly rushed at my face and started screaming at me with a big, opened mouth. I opened my eyes and started to scream at my boyfriend to get it off me. I could feel it so aggressive, trying to get on or in me. I ran from the house screaming and shaking. I don't think I ever used the Ouija board again. One day it disappeared from my bedroom. It completely vanished. I have never found it and have no explanation for what happened to it. That is terrifying. Like, the worst possible thing that can happen, you guys, is when you play with a demon or a spirit in the Ouija board for it to come out into your reality. That is simply just terrifying. And the fact that, like, it's just, like, rushing towards her and she's just, like, screaming, like, I would be completely terrified. That is terrifying. Okay. Number 7 is called The Figure at the Window. When I was around 12 or 14, one girl brought a Ouija board to my friend's birthday slumber party. I was pretty skeptical, but also really curious about it as I had never used one before. We took turns asking questions, and I just figured someone else was moving the planchette. The other girls were pretty creeped out, but I wasn't until I answered a question for me that nobody else knew the answer to. To this day, I can't explain how that answer appeared or any of the other paranormal experiences that happened after we put the board away. I truly believe that we contacted something, and it stuck around. There was just generally a lot of small things, like footsteps above us when we were on the top floor. The door kept swinging open on its own, and the girl who lived there said it never did that on its own before. Then the creepiest part was that a bunch of us randomly woke up at around 4 or 5 in the morning, and a few girls saw a black figure walking down on the street outside the window. Apparently, one of the girls had seen what they thought was the same figure with his face at the window on the second floor earlier. That is terrifying. I think the worst possible thing could be you waking up and just seeing like a face at the window. Like that is just terrifying. Okay. The last one is called Secrets of the Lake. When I was little, my mom took out a Ouija board and asked my brother and I if we'd like to play with it. It started out pretty funny. Someone was obviously moving the glass thing, making words and stuff that we found funny. Did I mention we were really young at that point? But then my mom said, let's get serious and try to contact someone. Here's where it gets weird. A friend of hers had recently gone missing. He'd been missing for a month or so, and nobody knew where he was. When we asked who it was we were talking to, his name was spelled out. Let's just say it was George, since I don't generally remember. When we asked George if he was my mom's friend, he said, yes. My mom got visibly upset and asked where he was. In a lake. Was spelled out. It was extremely upsetting, and we stopped immediately. My mom tried to be lighthearted about it, and since I was young, I believed it was no big deal as well, following her lead. About 2 weeks later, they found George's body. He'd been hit by some car or train or something on some bridge, and his body had fallen into the nearby lake, though it was more of like a very large pond. It was a reasonably remote place, so nobody had found it for a while. That is the last story, and wow. Okay, so it seems like they were talking to their mom's friend because he told them, he's like, I'm in a lake, and that's just terrifying. Okay, guys, wow. Honestly, I feel that a lot of people think that Ouija board is a game, when in reality it's not. Like, you can contact something and bring something into your reality that you can't, like, take back out. Like, a lot of people say that burning and breaking a Ouija board is the worst way to get rid of it, because when you burn or break a Ouija board, you're letting all the spirits that were played in that board and contacted out into your reality. And spirits and demons can form attachments pretty quickly if you invited them in. Like, we talked about a lot of games on my channel where you have to invite a spirit in, and you know, I always say just because you asked it to leave or just because you said goodbye or anything doesn't necessarily mean they'll leave. Like, if you invite them in, they have permission to enter, and demons, spirits, and ghosts don't just leave like that. Like, you don't know what you're inviting into your reality, into your space to play, and you never know what you're contacting when you play with Ouija board, which is why they always tell you to be respectful, because you don't know what you're contacting, and you can, by all means, be talking with something that doesn't want to do anything but cause you harm. Like, honestly, there are people who said they had beautiful experiences and were able to contact a deceased relative, but there were also people who said that they wish they never touched the board in the first place. Like, people normally play Ouija boards to try to contact a deceased relative or a family member or somebody that unfortunately passed away, but demons and spirits can also manipulate and act like a family member and family friend to try and trick you. Also, they always say be respectful because, again, you don't know what you're contacting. So you don't know what can come through the board to take physical control of you and the planchette. Also, the planchette starts to do figure eights or goes flying across the board and landing on the other side of the room like you read some of the stories, and you should just immediately close the session, because if something is powerful enough to make the planchette fly across the board, then that means that whatever you're contacting is something very strong, and probably you should not be talking with them. Like, the planchette should just stay on the board and be moving, and whatever you're talking with shouldn't have the force to make it fly across the room. It should be, like, specifically on the board, not moving. And honestly, I just feel that all those stories had one thing in common. They all either were contacting something that didn't want to be contacted, or they were contacting something that knew everything about them. Also, the second story we read, that all of them got hospitalized. Like, I feel that's not a coincidence that every single one of their moms had to get hospitalized, and that, you know, they had some kind of medical condition. Like, I feel that's not just normal, and especially after they play with the Ouija board, all of a sudden they're all sick. Like, I feel that spirit did something. Also, the fact, the first one, they could see them through the cat's eyes, and that's just, like, terrifying. And the one that we read, that when she saw a spirit in the corner of her room, like, it's honestly really terrifying what can happen when you play with Ouija board. Like, it's just that you gotta be careful because you don't know what's coming through the board, and some demons in there are so evil that all they want to do is honestly just cause the worst pain in your life. And sometimes you might not be able to take them out. Like, even if you say goodbye and close out the board, there could still be something lingering in the darkness. Also, I know some people have said that they didn't close out the board, like they didn't say goodbye when closing out the board, and that's the worst possible thing you could do, because when you start playing with Ouija board, you open a portal. If that portal is not closed, then whatever you contacted and brought through into your world is still there. You never closed the portal, you never like said goodbye, so they weren't back through the portal. The portal is still open. And a lot of people can get freaked out sometimes and just forget to say goodbye, which is one of the most dangerous things to forget to do, because if you don't close the portal, then that portal is still open and they could still be there. Honestly, I just feel that the Ouija board shouldn't be taken as a game. Like, I know a lot of people, again, I don't know if this is true or not, but a lot of people in my elementary and middle said that they play with Ouija board. Now, when it comes to them saying that, again, I don't know if it's true or not. I mean, personally, me when I was younger, I thought it was true. Now I'm not so sure, just because, I mean, I know my class was very into the paranormal, but my class also wasn't stupid enough to play with something that they know can get them seriously hurt. And also, I don't think the parents would be okay with it either. But a lot of them said that they did play with the Ouija board, and I don't know if that's true or not. My aunt played with it back in Egypt. She went to a friend's house and they played with it. I didn't really ask my aunt what happened. My dad's aunt brought it with them when they went on a family trip to the beach in Egypt. So he's seen it, but he just never touched it. He was really young, but he's seen the Ouija board. So 2 people in my family have seen it. My aunt played with it. And honestly, I just think when it comes to playing on a Ouija board, you gotta be careful and just hope that whatever you're talking with doesn't want to cause you harm. I mean, most Ouija board spirits are known to be kind, nice, loving spirits, but there are some evil spirits that will cause you harm for waking them up or for mocking them, which is why they always say don't mock a spirit. Like, don't make fun of it, don't, like, ask it to prove it. The one thing you should never do is ask a spirit to prove something, because once you tell them prove it and they ask you, are you sure? Like, I've heard stories of people who ask the spirit to prove that they're real, and when the spirit asks them, are you sure? They're like, do whatever you want. Once you say that, you've invited whatever you're playing into the board out of the board and into your personal space. So it could do anything. Like, it could touch you, it can move things around, it can cause like physical or mental harm. Like, you should never ask a spirit to prove itself, because once you do, you invite it out of the board into your personal space, which is what you don't want to do. And spirits can form attachments really quickly, especially if it's from a Ouija board. So yeah, those stories were terrifying. And honestly, I just feel that when it comes to the Ouija board, you just gotta be careful. Like, be respectful and just know that it's not a game and that it can actually end in very, very bad news. But yeah, that's pretty much it for today's video. The Ouija board honestly always interested me. I also watched a ton of movies on the Ouija board, but I just know that a lot of people think it's a game, and that's not a game. Like, I know my ex-best friend, she always used to think the Ouija board was a game. She's like, we should get one and play with it at my house. And like, I was always scared of the Ouija board. Like, I think until grade 7, I was terrified of it, and I would always try to shut her out when she would talk about it because I did not want to hear about it. But yeah, that's pretty much today's video. I just want to share these stories with you guys. Comment down below and let me know your thoughts about the Ouija board and what you think, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye! Love you!